بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الشيخ محمد بن مكتوم بن جمعة آل مكتوم، الرئيس الفخري لجمعية الأسواق المالية في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة. أصحاب السعادة، الضيوف الأعزاء، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Dubai. My name is Shuruq Al-Banna and it's my honor to be your host for the next 2 days. Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Je m'appelle Shuruq et je suis ravie de vous retrouver à Dubaï pour cette belle rencontre. Et quel plaisir de présenter cette conférence pour la deuxième fois, entourée d'esprits brillants venus du monde entier. الإخوة والأخوات، يسعدني أن أرحب بكم جميعاً في هذا الحدث المميز. The 48th ICA Conference and Exhibition is a global platform where thought leaders, policymakers, and financial experts convene to explore different topics. And this year's theme is the shifting global order, challenges and regional responses. Now, over the coming 2 days, Dubai will become a hub for international dialogue where insights are shared, partnerships are built, and the future of financial markets is shaped. من هنا، من دبي التي تجمع العالم تحت راية الابتكار والانفتاح، نؤكد أن الحوار هو الطريق نحو مستقبل أكثر استدامة وتعاون. From treasury and investment strategies to fintech evolution and regional market integration, this conference reflects the regional's pivotal role in shaping a more balanced and adaptive global economy. You see, here in the United Arab Emirates, where vision meets progress, the financial sector continues to stand as a pillar of transformation, anchored in stability, driven by innovation, and committed to global excellence. And as the world navigates shifting economic landscapes, the UAE remains a bridge connecting East and West, tradition and technology, opportunity and action. Les Émirats, un pont entre les cultures, entre l'innovation et la tradition, une passerelle vers l'avenir. And to officially open this conference, we're honored to hear from distinguished guests and leaders, whom each has played a pivotal role in advancing financial markets, both regionally and globally. To begin, it's our honor to welcome Sheikh Mohammed bin Maktoum bin Juma Al Maktoum, who's the honorary chairman of the UAE Financial Markets Association, and whose patronage and continued support lend great distinction to this conference and to the financial community in the UAE. Your Excellency, we're deeply honored by your presence, and the stage is yours to officially inaugurate the conference.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy. First of all, I didn't thought of this number of audience will be over here. I'm really happy of that thing, and it's my honor of being over here and the guests and everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, and dear partners. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to Dubai and to the 48th ICA Arab Campus Conference and Exhibition. We are honored to host this important global gathering once again in the United Arab Emirates, a nation that continues to place innovation, resilience, and international cooperation at the center of its economic vision. This year's conference comes at a defining moment. As highlighted in the agenda, our world is experiencing profound shifts in global economic dynamic, productivity, geopolitical relationships, and technological change. These shifts have created both opportunities for financial market and for all economies. The Middle East, as noted in the program, has responded with strategic neutrality, economic diversification, stronger regional integrations, and major investments in clean energy and future technologies. These are not just policy choices, they reflect our region's belief in long-term stability and sustainable development. Sustainability is now central to financial leadership. Around the world, investors and institutions are recognizing that environmental and social risks are financial risks. At the same time, there is growing understanding that opportunities created by the green transition, from renewable energy to green finance, carbon markets, new technologies, and nature-based solutions, will be among the most significant drivers of growth in the decades ahead. Here in the UAE, sustainability is not a trend. It is a national priority, a long-term commitment, and defining pillar of our development model, whether through our leadership in renewable energy, our focus on climate diplomacy, or our effort to create standards for sustainable finance. The UAE has worked to ensure that economic growth and environmental responsibility move together. This year, as your discussion address technology transformation, bond markets, repo markets, and the future of currency system, one theme is clear. Sustainable finance will shape the next era for global markets. And the financial sector, represented here today by central bankers, global investors, treasury leaders, AI experts, economists, and regional and international banks, plays a critical role in accelerating these transitions. The UAE believes that sustainability is strengthened through cooperations. That is why gathering like this conference, which brings together institutions from across the Arab region and the world, are so important. Together, through innovation, responsible finance, and shared purpose, we can build resilient economies capable of navigating global uncertainty and shaping a more inclusive, stable financial future. To our international guests, welcome to Dubai, a city built on visions and the belief that progress must serve future generations. To our colleagues from across the Arab markets, your participation strengthens regional integration, supports our transition to sustainable economies, and reinforces the region's position as a global hub for finance and innovations. And to all speakers, thank you for contributing your expertise to an agenda that reflects the challenges and opportunities of our time. I wish you all a productive, inspiring, and impactful conference. With that, I officially inaugurate the 48th ICA Arab Campus Conference in Dubai. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing your opening remarks with us. Our next speaker is a key figure in the UAE's financial ecosystem who is dedicated to strengthening market integrity and advancing professional excellence across the industry. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mohamed Al Hashemi, President of the UAE Financial Markets Association, to deliver his remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Highness, Excellencies, dear guests. Thank you to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Maktoum bin Juma Al Maktoum for his inspiring words and for his support at this event. Welcome to the 48th Inter-Arab Campus Association Conference and Exhibitions here in Conrad in Dubai. For more than 50 years, the ICA has brought together financial leaders from different 14 countries in the regions, and today we are proud to host over 500 professionals from different sectors in the regions and the world. Our theme this year is Shifting Global Orders, Challenges and Regional Responses. We will discuss important topics such as global growth, technology, AI, blockchain, and how our region can prepare for the future. Please take time to connect with others and visit exhibition hall and meet our partners. A big thanks to all of our sponsors, Mashraq Bank, FAB, Murex, Credit Agricole, Finestra, LSEG, Ajman Bank, UBS, and TB ICAP for making this event possible. I wish you all a great 2 days of learning, networking, and collaboration. With this and with the start of the 48th ICA Conferences and Exhibitions, please join me to welcome the chairman of the ICA, Mr. Abdullah Daoud, for his opening remark. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Your Highness, Sheikh Mohammed bin Maktoum bin Al Maktoum, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ICA Board and myself, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the 48th ICA Conference and Exhibition, which is held under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Maktoum bin Al Maktoum, Honorary Chairman of UAE Financial Markets Association. It is an honor to have you here as we meet under the theme, The Shifting Global Order, Challenges and Regional Responses. In a time marked by geopolitical uncertainties, macroeconomic shifts, and with AI gaining grounds in all sectors, the banking industry stands at a critical juncture. These factors not only test our resilience, but also present unique opportunities for innovation and collaboration. The annual conference and exhibition of the Inter-Arab Campus Association, our flagship, serves as a platform for leaders, experts, traders, and professionals to engage in a meaningful dialogues, share insights, and strategize for future. Together, we can navigate these complexities and drive growth and stability in the financial markets. At the same time, every annual edition we hold is a forum for networking, building new relations, sharing views, and staying up to date with the latest products and modernizations in the financial markets industry. On behalf of ICA, I would like to thank UAE Financial Markets Association, chaired by Mr. Mohamed Al Hashemi, and every member of the organizing committee for their great efforts in making this edition another success. I would also extend a big thank you to the sponsors, exhibitors, and participants whom are unquestionably contributing to this success. Finally, We all look forward to enjoying our time together during the business sessions, working lunch, and in the evening social gatherings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daoud, for your speech. Next, we're privileged to hear from a global thought leader and distinguished economist who has been at the forefront of international efforts to promote inclusive growth, financial resilience, and sustainable investment, bridging the worlds of policy, finance, and development. Please welcome United Nations Special Envoy on Financing Sustainable Development, Dr. Mahmoud Mohieldin, to the stage.
Your Highness, Sheikh Mohammed bin Maktoum bin Juma Al Maktoum, Mr. Mohamed Al Hashemi, the President of FMA, the Chairman Abdullah bin Daoud, the Chairman President of ICA, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a great pleasure and honor to be back again to this vibrant, dynamic city. It's great to be back to the United Arab Emirates with its great welcoming approaches to new ideas and providing solutions, not just to the country and the region, but for the rest of the countries of the emerging markets and the developing economies. And I would say in some aspects as well, given the leadership of the UAE in some solutions related to digitalization, preparedness to AI, and being in the forefront on investments in sustainability as demonstrated in the successful COP here a couple of years ago. It's very much helpful for us all to see all of these kind of mega trends being addressed at the national, local, and regional level. So I arrived today between two summits. One that's about to end, and the other is about to start. The one that I just finished my part in it was in Brazil, where I participated in the Business and Finance and Investment Forum in Sao Paulo in the preparation of the Berlin meetings. And I'll give you a couple of highlights of relevance to your discussion today. And from here, I'll be going to South Africa for the B20 and the G20 meeting there. Because of what was mentioned by the inspiring points of emphasis by the three speakers, we're living indeed in a world of uncertainty. So one good advice from veterans who attended these summits, you go definitely with your high hopes, but better to go there with managed expectations. So, and you'll see all of these interesting long items of the expected outcomes of summits. But actually for the one in Brazil, I went there with a focus in two areas. Very pragmatic, could be super pragmatic given the circumstances as well. But there was a good initiative demonstrating the importance not just of the public sector, but the private sector and philanthropies through the establishment of the Tropical Forest Forever facility, which is an ambitious project led by the President of Brazil, President Lula, with a commitment to mobilize $125 billion for the protection of the forests. So far, they got around $5.5 billion of pledges, and I hope that these pledges are going to be materialized and realized. But again, this is the kind of an approach that governments alone cannot really do it, and there is a role for markets and a role for the philanthropies to provide the kind of catalytic capital and the technical support as well for this important project. Yes, there was an involvement from some of the multilateral development banks, but it's very much a private market based approach. The other outcome that I was expecting more of and still continuing is the role of the institutional investors, the entities with deep pockets, including the insurance sector, and the solution that could come from the pre-arranged finance for sustainability at large. And again, because of the budget constraints, we are thinking of different ways on how to handle the needs for development and climate finance, sustainability at large, especially with the sudden collapse of the foreign assistance, as we have seen it by the elimination of support from USAID and the major cuts from development finance agencies of Europe. So this is about the Brazilian-hosted COP30. Of course, there are lots of other matters, but if you want really to seek some practical kind of solutions with implications, these could be one of the two winners that you can really chase after the COP. And the second, yes, the G20 is important. The members of the G20 are responsible for 80% of the global GDP of the world. And you will see a great list of agenda items covering all aspects of life, including the push towards increasing economic growth, inclusive growth, mobilizing finance. But actually, if you are asking me what is the area of focus there, it's an area that is not necessarily an outcome of the G20. You may not see it in a communique, but actually it is being supported by the presidency of Brazil in the areas of great relevance to you when it comes to trading in emerging markets and developing economies, which is about the cost of capital. The cost of capital. And I'm happy that my good friend Trevor Manuel, the former Minister of Finance of South Africa, is leading the work. And there is going to be a report that's going to be released by the 22nd of this month. And this area of focus is of great relevance. You can blame it on many things: bad communication, perception of markets, role of rating agencies, but we have seen that the development banks, including the World Bank through the IFC, the European Investment Banks, the EIB and the EBRD and others, have been very much supporting updates on the what we know of the default risks related to credit advanced to developing and emerging markets. And what we have seen during the last 3 years of updates, that there is a great deal of improvement in the real world of business and transactions in developing countries and emerging markets. But is that reflected in the cost of capital? Unfortunately not. The perception is much worse than the reality. The default cases in developing economies and emerging markets, including in Africa, Asia, Latin America, is much better than what's being perceived. Despite these updates, and this is basically the responsibility of many of you in this market, didn't really get reflected adequately in the cost of obtaining finance for projects. And it costs multiples for the same project that you conducted in an Arab country, and a Middle East country, or an African country, to what you will get in the OECD. Yes, there is a country risk. Yes, there is a sectoral risk. Yes, there is a project risk, but the perceived risk is much higher, and it is not fair for business, and that it needs really more work than what we have seen. There are many different attempts to address this issue, including the call for African presidents to establish a new rating agency for Africa. But we know today that there is more than 60 rating agencies around the world. We know that the business of credit rating is dominated more than 95% by the 3 big credit rating agencies. And the main value, perhaps, of this new credit rating agency is to tell the big players in the market that there are signals of unhappiness and frustration of the methodology that needed really to be revised. And at the same time, it may need really some sort of better communication between the issuers of credit and the investors in bonds and different papers to improve the spreads as we have seen them today. I'm saying that because many of the developing economies and emerging markets are facing of what my good friends at the World Bank, my former employer, call it the silent debt crisis. Because of the cost of capital, there is a cost of debt, and many countries are paying today in their debt service more than what they pay on health, education put together. And then you ask about the state of the SDGs. Sustainable development goals without adequate finance are always going to be compromised. And unfortunately, based on the latest averages of reports coming from the UN system, we know that only 15% of the SDGs are on target to be achieved by 2030, and 55% of the SDGs are slightly or significantly off track, and even worse, we have 35% of the SDGs are worse than where we were back in 2015. This doesn't ignore the fact that there have been a great deal of achievements in many countries, like China managing to end extreme poverty in 2020. India had been announced last year that they managed to end extreme poverty in 2024. I would have wished to say the same about the Arab countries, but unfortunately, since 2015, extreme poverty had been doubled. And again, this is the issue of average. Of course, countries of high income, like the GCC countries, Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and the rest of the GCC, or some other high middle-income countries have done better, but the average here in the Arab world is leaving a lot to be desired, and I hope in the remaining 4 to 5 years we can really be doing better than what we have seen during the last 10 years since the launching of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement of Climate. So for the remaining time, I just like to, and again, I like to congratulate the organizers for an excellent and rich agenda with excellent speakers who have the experience and the market practice. But very quickly, I'd like just to put some highlights for your consideration during the discussions. Why His Highness and the rest of the speakers emphasize these issues of major shifts, uncertainty? Yes, because we have seen that coming for quite some time. And we see that the world is moving forward towards the east, the center of economic gravity, based on a variety of models. Either you believe in the model developed by the London School of Economics professor Danny Quah, who moved himself, he shifted himself from London, and now he is located in Singapore, his home country, to prove again that the center of economic gravity, by weights of GDP, by weights of trade and investment, is shifting towards the east. That has implications in not just in the economic dynamics, but in the political economy dynamics. Then another interesting shift is the state of the middle class around the world. While the middle class in Europe, in the United States, are struggling under pressures of lower growth, lack of productivity, what Mario Draghi, the formidable economist, former head of ECB, and former Prime Minister of Italy, called it the existential crisis of Europe because of lack of competitiveness, and there is an interesting report he published last year about it. You see this kind of booming growth in China, in ASEAN countries, and India to see this kind of increase for the middle class. So the shift towards the east is accompanied by an increase as well of the welfare of the middle class in the east. So that again has political economy dynamics with the excitement and expectations of the rising middle class in India, China, and Asia, to the frustration of the middle class in Europe and the United States, and that's why you see aspects of extremism and interesting choices when it comes to the ballot box in elections. The third observation here on the shifts that during the last 40 years, based on some analysis by UNCTAD that the top 2,000 transnational or multinational corporates, their share of global income is multiples of the share of workers' income. And then again, there is an issue of discrepancy that has implications. So you reflect on these trends, please, before you get into the cyclical changes. And well, I entertain you very quickly based on the recent report of the IMF on the economic outlook, the global economic outlook, but I'll take some numbers of relevance to our region here, the Middle East, that definitely contain all of the Arab countries. Worldwide, the global growth was 3.3% in 2024, declined to 3.2, declined further to 3.1. So you can always say, well, at least we are not in a formal kind of global recession, but 3% is not meeting the expectations of the aspiring people of the world and will not really help achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Advanced economies are growing by an average of 1.5 to 1.6%. Emerging markets and developing economies are growing by 4.2%. What about the state of the Arab countries or the Middle East and North African countries? Back in 2024, we're around 2.1%. This year, 25, 3.2. Next year, we're going to be cruising around 3.7 to 3.6% from now until 2030. Is that enough to generate income? Is that enough to sustain investments for growth? Definitely not. So what can we do about that? And this kind of tension between the emerging powers like China, India, the ASEAN, some of the countries of the Global South, some of the middle powers, including some of the middle powers of the GCC countries, and the resistance of the incumbent powers to play game, to pass the baton, or at least to give space to the rising powers, we are seeing this kind of tensions. Yes, there have been a great deal of trade war. I think trade war is not really describing what we're seeing. It's an economic war because not stopping at trade. It's trade war. It's constraining investment flows. It's constraining migration flows. It's constraining technological cooperation. So whatever is left there for economic cooperation, if the four lines of cooperation are being constrained. So we are not in a trade war. Unfortunately, we are in an economic war. Some countries rediscovered the beauty of industrial policies. When I was at the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, some of the experts there called it the policy that shouldn't be named. But it's coming back, but unfortunately coming back with protectionist measures. Having said that, what could be the advice of our region here? And when the managing director of the IMF was here in the United Arab Emirates attending the government summit in February, she advised, or she shared, nobody can really be in a position of advice, but sharing knowledge and expertise, and you can pick and choose based on your wisdom and your understanding of your culture and political economy. So she suggested 3 Ds, and as a good friend, I told her that we need to add a couple of more Ds to what she said. She said the first thing, diversify, or diversification. So the diversification, I'm always happy being here in the GCC when the top officials and ministers responsible for the economy, before they talk about growth, they talk about the growth of the non-oil economy and to what extent that they have been diversifying the economy to be less dependent on oil and natural gas. While they are maximizing the benefits of the oil sector and the energy sector based on natural gas as much as they can, but there is a push that is basically explaining why many of you are here in areas related to finance, investments, within the borders and beyond. So diversification and the use of investments in new technologies, AI transformational is part of that. The second is related to what I just mentioned, which is basically the second D, which is, she mentioned, digitalize. It's an issue of culture. It's not just about transformation and putting or installing some digital solutions or applications here and there. As my good former colleague in government, the late Minister of Communication and Information Technology, Dr. Tariq Kamil, rahimahullah, he told me before he died that we started with the CIT sector as a sector, but now it's a way of life. It's not just affecting businesses, it is affecting every one business in this room, but it's affecting our life and how we communicate and how we go about in this life at large. But this needs to be in the readiness map. And again, I encourage you, if you have time, to Google either by the IMF or the Stanford Index. There is something called Preparedness Index and Readiness Index. Unfortunately, in our region, if you see the map of the world, only few countries, the GCC countries, Morocco and Jordan, and in some aspects, Egypt as well, are ready more than others based on technological infrastructure, regulations, ethical frameworks, and investment in human capital through education and innovation to be ready for AI to be maximized. But the rest of the region are not really in this readiness index. That gets me into the third D. The first was diversification, the second is digitalization, and the third is deregulation. And here I'm happy to speak in a country that had managed to do a great deal of deregulation, giving space to the private sector through a variety of incentives, to support startups, and to encourage public-private partnerships. And there are many good examples around the Arab world discovering the importance of the public-private partnerships and to deregulate to level the playing field for the private sector. These are what the managing director of the IMF mentioned, but I told her that there could be other Ds of equal importance, if not more. One is related to demography. We are blessed in this region by having a great composition that could be subject to the support and happiness of our friends, and I hate to say the envy of enemies, because we have a good deal of good composition of the demography. It's youthful, expected life at birth is extended, so you have a youthful society with extended life as well at birth. That gives you opportunities for a variety of investments, and in the new world, as being demonstrated through the Nobel Prizes for those who won it this year, it's about ideas, innovation, and competition, and disrupting the economies. The three winners of the Nobel Prize have been demonstrating this idea. It's not just about capital, it's not just about land, it's not about resources, it's about people, ideas, and if you have good trained people with ideas, then the rest would come to you. So this issue of demography and how to maximize it. And then I added to that, you cannot do any of this without adequate data. And I'm very much thrilled that in all of your sessions today, aspects related to integrity of data, transparency, sharing data. When you trade in data. Data, with all due respect to oil, data is the new oil of the 21st century. And again here, especially in this country, areas related to data science, data technologies, AI, and how to use it, to the extent that I think it was one of the countries that recognizes the importance of AI ahead of anyone, to the extent of appointing a federal minister responsible for AI. That includes as well the ecosystem of data. And the very last one, which is basically what you are going to be discussing in the session, the last session. And again, I'll try to do my best to attend all of the sessions, to take notes and learn from those who have the wisdom and those who have the practice. And this is the way to deal with this kind of uncertain world. And again, congratulations for your convening power here. It's the 6D is the dollar, the future of the dollar. And it's a thorny topic, it's a sensitive topic. And there is a bit of debate about the future of the dollar, which so far is dominating trade, finance is dominating debt. When it comes to international reserves, it's between 58% to 60% of international reserves. 20% are left to the euro, which is basically trading within the EU. Very few holding of the euro outside the EU. And then the rest, 20%, are among the rest of the currencies, from the sterling to the Swiss franc, to the Australian, Canadian dollar, and a bit for the renminbi. But what about the future of the dollar? After the weaponization of the dollar, there were many question marks about the dependency on the dollar. And whether, especially after the freezing of the SWIFT, that pushed many central banks to go more for gold and invest and buy. Don't be confused with the increasing share of the gold in the international reserves, because as we know, the gold price has increased by roughly 40%, for instance, since the start of this year. But there had been a great deal of buying of gold during the last 5 years by major central banks in emerging markets. But it's not just about the gold here. What will be the alternatives? The internationalization of the renminbi. And then there are 3 areas I like to leave you with, that issue of the future of any currency. The dollar was not the main currency forever. It inherited the role of the pound sterling. The pound sterling inherited the role of the Dutch guilder of the past. So what makes the dollar today? I can tell you 3 aspects. One, quoting Janet Yellen, who used to be the Secretary of the Treasury of the US, and before that, the head of the Federal Reserve System. She said, the dollar is there because we have rule of law, deep market, liquidities, and ability for investors to diversify. Remember this, because these are basically the permanent test to the current dollar. If you have doubt about rule of law and governance, if you have doubt about liquidity, if you have doubt about the depth of the market, the dollar will not be there unless these conditions last. The second aspect of it is that we grow accustomed to the dominance of the dollar. Here I'm quoting President Lula of Brazil. As a member of the BRICS, he said, well, we should really have alternatives to the dollar, and we need really to trade and do more. And we have seen a great deal of movement for local currency trading across border. This is a growing line of business, and I bet that many of you have been doing that with their central banks, especially with the digitalization of currencies. But the third aspect of it, regarding the fundamentals, is War Prasad, who is a top economist and great man of knowledge when it comes to the future of currencies. He said, well, it's the relative performance of the economy. So, and in his book, The Future of Money, he said, well, the US had done everything wrong, but still in managing the economy during the last few years, especially when we saw the high inflation that we have never seen for almost 40 years, lower growth, and then the confusion recently with the trade wars. But despite that, the performance of the US economy is still better than the alternatives. When I mentioned to you that the advanced economies are growing, for instance, by that figure of let me be exact on that figure and I'll conclude by it, 1.6, the US is still more than that. So in this kind of uncertain world, what we should really be doing, it's basically those 6 Ds, you need really to put them into consideration. I will not repeat them again. But basically, remember them: the diversification, the deregulation, the digitalization, the demography, the data, and issues about the dollar as a D, but basically for proxy for the currency that we are dealing with. But we cannot really do that without strong foundations of our society and inclusive growth and sustainability, without localization of development, without regionalization. Yes, I'm happy and pleased that there are many bright spots in the Middle East today, from the GCC countries to many good attempts for industrialization in Morocco, brave attempts for infrastructure development in Egypt, brave work in Jordan. There are few spots here and there, but it's not just these few spots of brightness. The strength of any economy, any society, any region is not by its strongest link, it's by the strength of the weakest link. I'm afraid to say that there are many weak links in our region, and we need to learn something or two, or more perhaps, from the ASEAN, from a small group of countries forming themselves back in 1967. Many of these countries were very poor. Many of these countries were even in war against each other. But today, the ASEAN is growing fast, developing fast, emerging in many aspects of work with the investments in human capital, in infrastructure, in the resilience. And now we have seen them in action with the recent summit in Kuala Lumpur, inviting the GCC, inviting China, and then the next one, they invited the US. Having this kind of good, solid foundation at the regional level, focusing on trade, focusing on investment, focusing on the strength of the society at large, and investing in the best that we have, not just on the trade of the day, but basically the trade of the future, investment in ideas and human capital. Having said that, I wish you all the best, and again, congratulate you for this great convening of many experts and knowledgeable people in the different fields that you are tackling today. And again, it's a great honor to be with you all here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mohieldin, for that inspiring keynote and the timely reminder how so many aspects such as diversification, digitalization, demography, data, the dollar, they all go, and other aspects all go hand in hand in shaping our shared financial future. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference is a marker of the success of the UAE Financial Markets Association. Now, our deepest gratitude has got to go to the team behind the scenes, who's worked tirelessly to make this event possible. We must also extend our heartfelt gratitude to the ICA, to the strategic partners, sponsors, including Mashriq, Murex, First Abu Dhabi Bank, Finastra, LSEG, Crédit Agricole, Ajman Bank, TP ICAP, UBS, all the exhibitors, and of course, each and every one of you whose participation makes this event truly meaningful. And with that, we officially mark the beginning of the 48th ICA Conference and Exhibition. Nous vous souhaitons un bon séjour à Dubaï. وفي الختام نشكر لكم حضوركم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you. Coming up next is our first keynote of the day. For those who are attending, I kindly request you to remain seated while we prepare the stage shortly. Thank you for your patience.